You're in a cathedral of reflections, but none of them show your face. Instead, each mirror captures the ache of someone once loved, a trembling child, a mother whose scream never made a sound, a hollow man whispering your name in your voice. The search for self only leads to disappearance. And maybe that's not a dream. Maybe it's a nervous system's biography. Too much is felt, too deeply, too often. Not because of choice, but because something inside was wired to do so. It's called empathy. Others call it kindness. But no one ever asks what it costs to carry pain that doesn't belong to you. What if this empathy isn't a gift? What if it's armor, crafted in spaces where silence punished, where love had conditions, where peace required performance, where being good meant being invisible? Empathy wasn't learned because it was beautiful. It was learned because it was necessary. The emotional translator emerged in a house where no one spoke truth. And now, sorrow flows for wounds never received. Grief with no origin is carried. Consolation is given to those who caused harm, and it's mistaken for compassion. But it isn't. It's self-abandonment in disguise. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is how that fate plays out. The same types are drawn in over and over. The wounded, the cold, the angry, people whose shadows demand carriers. And carrying happens, not from blindness, but from an internal belief that perhaps this time love will finally stay. But it doesn't, because those drawn to this energy don't want healing. They want fuel, and the wide-open heart becomes their psychic meal. Empathy, at its deepest, doesn't just feel. It absorbs. Every glance, every sigh, every silence, absorbed like static into a living antenna. But this sensitivity isn't protection, it's exposure. Manipulators don't see empathy as a virtue. They see it as access. They notice softness, forgiveness, hesitation. And to them, these are resources, not signs of soul. A narcissist isn't full of self, they're hollow. They survive by draining others. And the empath, the offering is given freely. Anger is absorbed, chaos is managed, responsibility is assumed for what was never yours. Not from weakness, but because harmony has long been more familiar than truth. The unconscious contract begins here. Energy is poured into another's shadow, and what comes back is an illusion of meaning, of intimacy, of being necessary. But it's not a relationship, it's a transaction, and one side is always left bleeding. Jung warned, the unconscious seeks energy, not fairness. And when psychic boundaries aren't defined, empathy becomes an open invitation. Someone else's unresolved rage becomes anxiety. Their guilt an identity. Their brokenness becomes a personal mission. And one day there's nothing left except a life built around another's damage. This is the empath's paradox. The very wounds still carried are what draw familiar pain. It's not connection, it's repetition. And beneath it, the fantasy. If they can be healed, maybe that healing will finally reflect back. But it won't, because healing was never the goal. Feeding was. And the unaware empath becomes nourishment. Culture romanticizes sensitivity, pastel quotes, Instagram therapy, buzzwords like empath sold as superpowers. But the quiet truth? Empathy without self-awareness isn't noble, it's surrender. Real empathy is not soft, it's fierce, it cuts. Not outwardly, but within. Because when everything is felt but nothing understood, identity dissolves. Not a sponge by metaphor, but by biology. Pain is absorbed, dysfunction is internalized, compassion becomes camouflage for self-erasure. Empaths don't just feel, they merge. And that merging, when unconscious, becomes spiritual entrapment. Sadness comes, but it isn't yours. Fear surfaces, but no threat exists. Guilt lingers, but no action caused it. This isn't healing. This is possession. The unconscious is a living force. It doesn't knock, it seeps. It moves through cracks in identity, through silence, through inherited beliefs, through boundaries never learned. That's the shadow's method. Someone represses rage, and without knowing, it transfers into open fields, into empathic nervous systems tuned to feel what others won't. There's no malice in this transaction, just reflex. And if there's no training, no inner discernment, no familiarity with the shape of your own energy, the absorption is automatic. It's carried, wept over, confused for self. Apologies are offered for moods that didn't originate here. Problems are solved that were never yours. And identity quietly disappears in the process of emotional caretaking. This is the side of empathy no one romanticizes. It's brutal, it's isolating, and it ends in one aching question. Who exists when no one needs saving? Jung didn't see empaths as gentle mystics. He saw psychic permeability. Souls open not only to emotion, but to archetypal forces far beyond personal biography. The unconscious is not personal, it's collective, and it wants to move. Empaths are its preferred vessels, not because of virtue, but because of access. Empaths carry unloved parts of others, not because they choose to, but because they're open. And archetypes, those ancient energies that live below personality, enter where trauma cracks the shell. The mother, the wounded child, the savior, the shadow, the martyr. They're not metaphors, they're movements. They slip into psyche through repetition, through pain, through unmet needs. When someone represses their grief, it seeks an empath's body to mourn in. When rage is denied, it searches for a heart to beat in. When shame is buried, it finds another chest to weigh down. This is how ghosts find homes. And it doesn't come like lightning, it comes like fog. After the phone call, there's exhaustion. In crowds, there's a phantom ache. In the quiet, unexplained tears arrive. The pain isn't felt with someone, it's felt as them. That isn't empathy. That's psychic contamination. It has consequences. A woman once shared a dream. Inside a museum carved from stone, she touched statues of people she had loved. Each bore a plaque. Do not touch. Property of the dead. But she touched them anyway, and each began to bleed. She woke in sobs, not from fear, but recognition. Life had become an act of resurrection, trying to feel for the ones who refused to feel, but it cost her the memory of her own soul. Empaths don't only carry the pain of lovers and friends, they carry ancestral scripts, echoes from forgotten generations. A healer's granddaughter now trembles in crowded rooms. A soldier's son feels guilt for knowing peace. No stories told, but feelings inherited. This is the burden of untended empathy. It becomes a vault for ghosts, a storage unit for every wound the world refuses to name. Jung didn't advise disconnection. He offered something more sacred. Awareness. Know what moves through you. Name it, trace its source, learn to say, this feeling is not mine. Because without that knowledge, emotional fusion becomes identity. Empaths aren't born soft, they're shaped by silence. Before they were intuitive, they were children decoding danger. Feeling was the only safety they had. A girl learned to interpret the sound of keys at the door. That small detail told her whether tonight would be safe. Her nervous system adapted, not out of mysticism, but survival. A boy saw his mother cry behind closed doors. He learned that if he could make her laugh, the sobs stopped. He became light itself, but not for joy, for protection. These aren't spiritual awakenings, they're trauma reflexes. And still, society applauds. You're so caring, so intuitive, so wise. No one sees the child who flinched at silence, who mistook emotional labor for love, who became a mirror so others didn't have to face themselves. Empathy becomes the mask trauma wears. Hypervigilance gets called intuition. Self-erasure is mistaken for grace. And unless questioned, the cycle repeats. Every room, every relationship, a reenactment of childhood roles. The caretaker, the peacemaker, the emotional container. It isn't empathy, it's imprisonment, a gift born in brilliance, shaped in fear. Until that fear is named, the gift continues to destroy the giver. There's a moment it begins. Help is offered, time is given, sadness is held, storms are weathered, without complaint. Because that's the role, that's the story. But no one asks where the healer bleeds, because they don't look broken, they look dependable. And silence becomes chronic, peace becomes performance, feeling becomes perpetual labor. And in all that doing, the person disappears. Not all at once, slowly. One unspoken truth at a time, one swallowed need, one more apology that wasn't owed, one more moment of being what someone else needed at the cost of everything else. Until one day the mirror no longer reflects anything at all. Only the roles remain. The therapist, the regulator, the peacekeeper. But where is the self? The soul became everyone's lighthouse, and no one saw the wreckage inside the light. This is the hidden cost of empathy without boundaries. Always needed, rarely seen, appreciated for what's given, forgotten for what's felt. Not even the empath knows who they are without the pain to absorb. The performance becomes addictive. To be needed feels like love. To be irreplaceable feels like belonging. But it isn't. Being needed isn't being seen. Being essential isn't being loved. And without clarity, a life is spent pouring into others, just to die thirsty. Empathy without sovereignty is not compassion. It's an ancient script, acted out unconsciously. Archetypes take the stage, the wounded healer, the martyr, the savior, the puppet. Each distorts empathy into performance, because when worth is measured by the pain that can be held, more pain is unconsciously sought just to feel worthy. Not compassion, entrapment by myth. Until the archetype is named, the soul remains hidden behind the mask. Not every empath is a victim, but those who remain unaware play a role that never ends. If this stirred something within you, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep reflections every day. This is Deep Thoughts Daily. Thank you for watching, and keep thinking deeper.